see this truck that's stuck here. Okay, love you.
In Prescott Valley, Arizona, the water was 5 feet high, and it was moving. Not standing water, not a puddle. A current powerful enough to pick up 4 steel shipping containers and carry them half a block down the street. A current that pushed cars away from where they were parked and filled apartments with mud from floor to ceiling.
Well, it's been raining for about an hour now, maybe longer than that, so there's my creek.
A woman came home from work to find her apartment completely destroyed. Everything she owned, buried in mud. She told reporters she did not even know she lived in a flood zone. She does now. And in southern Arizona, in the border city of Nogales, at least 7 people are dead. Bodies pulled from the Nogales Wash. Bodies recovered near Interstate 19. A binational search operation with more than 30 volunteers from fire departments and rescue teams on both sides of the U.S.-Mexico border, searching through floodwater that flowed from Sonora into Arizona and carried people with it. This is what Arizona's 2026 monsoon season looks like, and it is not finished yet.
What began as isolated...
Subscribe and turn on notifications, because Sonora is already setting up emergency shelters in preparation for more rain, and the system that produced this week's flooding has not fully moved on. Let us start with what happened in Prescott Valley on Monday evening, because the timeline of how fast things went wrong is something every person in a monsoon state needs to understand. At approximately 5 in the afternoon, Central Arizona Fire and Medical Authority received the first calls about severe flooding in northern Prescott Valley. By that point, the event was already well underway. Rain radar showed that 2.5 inches of rain had fallen over the area in a single hour. Not over a day, not over several hours. 1 hour, 2.5 inches. To put that in context, Phoenix's average rainfall for the entire month of July is approximately 0.97 inches. Prescott Valley received more than 2.5 times that in 60 minutes. When 2.5 inches of rain falls on a landscape in an hour, the ground cannot absorb it. Concrete, asphalt, rooftops, and compacted desert soil all shed water rather than absorb it. That water has to go somewhere. In Prescott Valley, it went into the streets, into the washes, and then into homes. At the intersection of Fulton Drive and Roundup Drive, residents described water more than 5 feet deep moving at high velocity. Traffic signals were knocked out, trees came down across roadways. Town officials closed multiple roads and urged residents to avoid all flooded streets. Central Arizona fire and medical crews responded to flooding incidents across the entire northern section of Prescott Valley simultaneously. 4 steel shipping containers belonging to Yavapai Mechanical were lifted by the current and moved approximately half a block from where they had been sitting. Containers that weigh thousands of kilograms, moved by water. That is the force that was running through the streets of Prescott Valley on Monday evening. By Tuesday morning, residents were digging their cars out of mud. Apartment units had mud covering floors, furniture, and walls. One resident said it was the worst flooding she had seen in 9 years of living in the area. Another said she had no idea the neighborhood was a flood zone until she came home to find her entire apartment destroyed. That is the detail that matters most. People living in areas that flood during extreme monsoon events who do not know they are in a flood zone. Not because the risk does not exist, but because the monsoon is unpredictable enough and the infrastructure old enough and the record sparse enough that the boundaries of risk are not always clearly communicated or understood. Now let us talk about what happened in Nogales, because that story is different in scale, in geography, and in the border dynamics that make it one of the most complicated flash flood situations in the American Southwest. Nogales sits directly on the U.S.-Mexico border in Santa Cruz County in the far south of Arizona. The city of Nogales, Arizona and the city of Nogales, Sonora are sister cities separated only by a fence and a wash. The Nogales Wash flows northward from the Sonoran side into the American side, crossing the international boundary underground through a concrete channel. When monsoon storms hit the mountains south of Nogales, Mexico, the water drains northward. It flows into the wash, and the wash carries it across the border. That is what happened this week. Heavy monsoon rainfall in Sonora produced a wall of water that moved through the Nogales Wash with enough force to kill people. The first fatalities were reported on July 16th. By July 17th, a man's body had been recovered near kilometer marker 22 along Interstate 19. A woman's body was recovered from the same location on July 18th. A third victim was found later. In a separate incident, the Pima County Sheriff's Department recovered a deceased male from the Santa Cruz River near the Interstate 10 and Interstate 19 interchange in Tucson. By July 20th, the confirmed death toll stood at 7 people. A binational search and rescue operation involving more than 30 volunteers from fire departments and emergency response organizations on both sides of the border worked through the floodwater for days. Mexican and American authorities are still working to identify some of the victims. There is reason to believe some of those who died entered the water on the Mexican side and were carried across the border by the current. The Nogales City Councilman, who spoke to reporters in the immediate aftermath of the first deaths, said something that should be heard clearly by anyone in the Southwest. He said it unfortunately happens every monsoon. People enter washes. They try to cross. The water is faster and deeper than it looks, and they do not make it. Turn around. Do not drown is not just a slogan. It is a statistical reality. The vast majority of flash flood deaths in the United States occur in vehicles or on foot near flooded washes and roadways. People who look at a wash and see ankle-deep water, not knowing that the same wash is carrying 10 times that volume upstream where they cannot see it. People who attempt crossings they have made before in dry conditions, not accounting for the fact that moving water at knee depth can knock an adult off their feet, and moving water at waist depth can carry a car. Turn around, do not drown is not just a slogan. It is a statistical reality. The vast majority of flash flood deaths in the United States occur in vehicles or on foot near flooded washes and roadways.
Monsoon.
People who look at a wash and see ankle-deep water, not knowing that the same wash is carrying 10 times that volume upstream where they cannot see it. People who attempt crossings they have made before in dry conditions, not accounting for the fact that moving water at knee depth can knock an adult off their feet, and moving water at waist depth can carry a car. In Arizona, the statistics on monsoon flash flood deaths are sobering. Year after year, the majority of people who die in Arizona, flood events die in or near vehicles. They drive around barricades. They see water on the road and judge it crossable. They have crossed that same road 100 times before and it was fine. This time, the drainage upstream released its water 30 seconds ago and the surge is arriving right now and they never saw it coming. The National Weather Service in Tucson maintains a Turnaround Don't Drown campaign specifically because the data is so consistent and so grim. Awareness of the risk does not always translate to behavior change. People are in a hurry. The road looks passable, the water looks shallow, and then 6 inches of fast-moving water lifts the front wheels of a vehicle and the current takes over. Nogales is prepared for this in ways that many smaller Arizona communities are not. The city maintains sandbags, barricades, and portable lights in flood-prone areas. Emergency procedures are practiced because the flooding happens, as the councilman said, every monsoon, and still 7 people died. Now let us zoom out, because what is happening in Arizona this week is not just a local weather story. It is the Arizona monsoon season doing exactly what the Arizona monsoon season has always done, at an intensity that is becoming more familiar and more extreme. The North American monsoon is a seasonal shift in atmospheric circulation that brings moisture from the Gulf of California and the Gulf of Mexico into the American Southwest and northern Mexico between June and September each year. This moisture interacts with the extreme daytime heat of the desert Southwest, fueling afternoon and evening thunderstorms that can produce extraordinary rainfall intensities over very short periods.
with little warning.
Is this Arizona?
This is not new. The monsoon has been a feature of Arizona's climate for thousands of years. What is changing is the intensity ceiling. The specific conditions that produced 2.5 inches of rain in 1 hour in Prescott Valley, conditions involving higher atmospheric moisture content driven by warmer sea surface temperatures in the Gulf of California, are appearing more frequently and producing more extreme rainfall rates than the historical record that Arizona's drainage infrastructure was designed around. Prescott Valley's drainage system was not designed for 2.5 inches of rain in an hour. No drainage system in a desert city of that size is. The calculations used to design culverts, channels, and storm sewers are based on historical storm frequency and intensity data. When actual storm intensities exceed those design parameters, the systems overflow. Water goes places it was not supposed to go, and apartments that were never mapped as flood zones fill with mud. A United Airlines flight inbound to Phoenix on Monday night was forced to make an emergency landing as severe weather swept across the valley. Roads were shut. Power was out across multiple neighborhoods. The storm moved through an entire metropolitan region, leaving flooding and debris in its wake, and by Tuesday morning, the cleanup was only beginning. And Phoenix was not even the hardest hit area. The storms that produced Monday's flooding in Prescott Valley were part of a broader monsoon pattern that had been active across the entire state for days. Cochise County in the southeast was hit with flash flood warnings as early as July 15th. The area around Bisbee and Naco received 2 to 3 inches of rain in a matter of hours, flooding Cave Creek, Silver Creek, and multiple other waterways in the region. Route 80 and Route 90 were affected. Portal and Paradise, small communities tucked into the Chiricahua Mountains, were under life-threatening flash flood conditions. The scope of what happened across Arizona this week is not one isolated storm. It is a monsoon season that has been active, aggressive, and deadly from its first weeks. Southern Arizona, southeastern Arizona, central Arizona, and the Phoenix Metro have all been affected within the same rolling 10-day period. Different storms, different communities, different geography, but the same underlying pattern. Moisture-laden air from the Gulf of California colliding with desert heat to produce rainfall intensities that the infrastructure was not built to handle. In a state where some regions receive less than 5 inches of rain per year on average, the monsoon delivers a significant portion of the annual total in the space of a few violent afternoon storms. That concentration of rainfall in time is what makes flash flooding so dangerous here. The ground is hard-baked from months of dry heat. It cannot absorb water quickly. And when 2 or 3 inches fall in an hour over terrain that drains toward washes, roads, and neighborhoods, there is no buffer. The water goes exactly where physics says it will go, which is downhill, fast, and into anything in the way. The state of Sonora in Mexico is now setting up temporary shelters in each of its municipalities in preparation for additional flooding. The list of shelter locations includes the Nogales Municipal Gymnasium, where cleanup from the most recent flooding is still ongoing. More rain is expected. The system is not done. For anyone living in Arizona, in New Mexico, in any part of the Southwest where the monsoon is active right now, the message from this week is the same one that emergency managers repeat every year. Know your flood zone status. Have a plan for if the power goes out. Never drive through flooded roads. Do not cross washes on foot during or after rainfall. A wash that looks passable can be carrying a deadly surge of water from rainfall that fell miles upstream, that you never saw and had no warning about. The woman who came home from work to find her apartment destroyed said she did not even know she lived in a flood zone. Flood zones are not always where we expect them to be, and the monsoon does not negotiate. Subscribe and hit the bell, because the Arizona monsoon season still has months to run, and the system that produced this week's deaths and destruction is already being followed by another.